All right, we're live on there. Welcome back, everybody, to another Ubuntu Community Team Q&A. We do these every week, same day, generally the same time. We're a little bit mixed up because of daylight savings changes in the US and Europe recently, but they're generally about this time of day. You should be watching this on ubuntuonair.com. If you're not there, you should go there because underneath the video widget, we've got a little IRC widget that will take you to our IRC channel. And that's where you can ask us questions, anything that you'd like. Start them with the word question in all capital letters, and that way they turn bright yellow in my IRC client, and then I won't miss them. So with me today, I've got Dustin Kirkland, who you may have heard about recently in the announcements with Ubuntu for Windows. So he's going to be talking about that a little bit with us. I think he's got a good demo that he's going to show us, and then we will take any questions you might have on that topic, as well as any other topic you have about Ubuntu in general. But first, I want to get through a couple of quick announcements. We have Ubuntu 16.04 being released at the end of this month, which means it's time to start planning your release parties. I know my local team had one this past weekend down in South Florida. Unfortunately, I couldn't go to that. But if you're involved in your local team, you should be planning a release party for your team. We have a global event on loco.ubuntu.com, and I will post a link to that right now. The global event is a way for us to track what all of the teams are doing in common. So we do this for release parties, global jams, that kind of thing, and that'll just group all of your events under one listing so that we can see what the community as a whole is doing. So plan your event, go ahead and add it to that, and then everybody will get to see what you're doing. We've also put out a call for speakers for UbuCon Europe. That's happening this November, I think it is. If you missed UbuCon Summit in California because you are in the wrong continent, you should definitely go to UbuCon Europe. It's going to be same setup, a lot of good speakers, a lot of good sessions. They've got, I think, 5 rooms available to them this time. It's going to be a big deal. If you have a topic that you want to present, go to ubucon.org and you'll find out more about the event and how to submit your talk to it. If you can help out by volunteering to be staff, they could definitely use your help on that too. We also have the Ubuntu Online Summit coming up in May. We are open now for session proposals to that. If you're not familiar with the Online Summit, it's kind of like this setup here where we've got a combination of video and IRC, but we have multiple sessions going on at the same time. And they can be presentations on things from the previous release, or they can be planning things for the next release. We've got a wide array of tracks that you can put your session under. So now we're putting out a call for proposals for that, and also anybody who can help us be a track lead for that. All track leads have to do is help us manage the schedule, help the speakers get set up with their Hangout and everything when it's time for their session. Not a really difficult job, and the more people we have, the easier it is for everybody all around. So that's at summit.ubuntu.com. If you go there, you can register that you're going to participate in it. You can propose sessions there, and then one of the track leads will review those proposals. I also want to say congratulations to the IRC Council, which just finished up a round of elections. So congratulations to everybody who is on the new IRC Council. We appreciate you stepping up to fill those roles and be a leader in our community. And speaking of leaders, the technical board is up for elections. The list of nominees was just posted on fridge.ubuntu.com, so I think that's open to any Ubuntu developers to go and vote for the new technical board. All right, those are all of the announcements that I have, so now we're going to go over to Dustin, and he's going to talk about Ubuntu on Windows and show a demo. You can go ahead and keep asking your questions. I see a lot of them coming in already. Once the demo's over, we'll go back through this and we'll answer them in the order they came in as quickly as possible to try and get through all of them. All right, Dustin, go ahead and take it away.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate the invitation and the opportunity to talk to the Ubuntu community about this Ubuntu on Windows. It's actually pretty exciting. You know, personally, I haven't used Windows since the Clinton administration. It's been 16 years since I've run Windows on a desktop prior to embarking on this interesting, unexpected journey. But we're really quite excited about it. This is an opportunity to bring Ubuntu and free and open source software to places that have not maybe traditionally had the opportunity to experience the things that we know and appreciate and love in open source software. I think about kids in schools or professionals in environments where they're handed a Windows laptop or desktop, and in just a few weeks or a few months, those individuals will be able to simply type Ubuntu or Bash on their Windows machine and instantly be in an Ubuntu user space in a Windows environment. So what I'm running here is Windows 10. It's an insider preview. As of tomorrow, Wednesday, April 6th, anyone who's running Windows 10 and is an insider, which you can sign up for at insider.microsoft.com, and if you configure your desktop to be on the fast ring, it's similar in the Ubuntu world to following the dev release of Ubuntu updates. If you configure your Windows 10 Insider installation to be in on the fast ring, you should be able to simply type Bash. You may need to enable developer mode as well, but I can demonstrate that now. Michael, if you want to switch over to my Windows desktop that I'm sharing here. I have an icon on my desktop. I'll show that in a second, but the general experience is click on the Windows button and type Bash and hit enter, and just like that, we are in a Bash shell in Windows. So you can see I'm starting in a directory, Mount C Windows System 32. One of the really interesting things I find about this environment that the Microsoft team has implemented is they've made all of your C drive available inside of Ubuntu, and all of Ubuntu visible from your Windows desktop. So it makes sharing and modifying and editing files very, very, very easy. This as a product, this is really aimed at developers. The developer who wants to maybe edit some files in Vim or go back and forth between Visual Studio and VI. It's really quite handy to have instant read-write access to that entire file system. So I'll just clear the screen and run a few things. We can run the lsb release command and see that this is what looks like what is it, -A. This is in Ubuntu. This is 14.04. 16.04 actually will be shipping in just a couple of weeks, and we're going to get that image updated in Windows just as quickly as possible. But some of the other things you might be interested in from a PS perspective, we are running a Bash here and init, but we could actually fork other processes off of this. If we look at the CPUs, we're going to see 4 raw CPUs. I'm looking at Intel Core i7. That's literally the CPU that's in my ThinkPad where I'm running this right now. This again isn't virtualization. It's not containers. It's not even emulation. This is straight translating Linux syscalls to Windows syscalls. I can see that I have all of the memory available in my system available to this Linux machine. I can see df-h/. I can see that I've got a 39 gig partition. I'm using 37 gigs. I can use find and grep. I can SSH to my to a server somewhere that's using the native SSH client in Ubuntu. I didn't have to use PuTTY or something like that. And then perhaps the most interesting thing, and this is where we really go a lot farther than just being Bash on Windows. We actually have access to the entire apt repository. We can search for anything inside of Ubuntu, and almost anything that will run on a command line should eventually run just fine, just perfectly inside of this Windows environment. So that's
the question I've seen a lot is what does uname show?
Yeah, great question. Let's see what uname shows. So uname-a, Linux localhost. My machine name is localhost. It shows a 3.4.8 plus kernel, so that's being emulated somehow by the Windows system. And then it looks like an x86 64. Michael, that's as much of a demo as I was planning on doing here. We can apt install some software. We can take some questions, maybe even take requests to run some commands. We'll see some things don't work. I'm looking at an older build. This was a build from about March 1st, and that team, the team at Microsoft, the Microsoft kernel team, has been working on this every single day. I'm planning on updating tomorrow to the beta that Microsoft is publishing tomorrow.
So, how have you enjoyed being back on Windows?
You know, it's fun. I would say that it's interesting. Just being an OS guy at heart, you know, I love Linux, I love Ubuntu, but you know, I've got I run Android in some places on my phone. In addition to my Ubuntu phone, I've got an iPad, a tablet. I have a Mac Mini, little desktop I use from time to time. Just sort of being an operating systems geek, it's interesting to see what other OSs look like today.
It sure has changed a lot, probably since the last time you used it. I know it has since the last time I used it, which was XP time period.
Yeah, it was, I want to say, probably May of 2000 when I permanently moved from Windows to Linux.
All right. And one more question that I have. I think you'd mentioned something about the init system for this, that it's not using systemd.
It's not. So the Microsoft team actually implemented a bare minimal init system themselves. So that ps command shows init is running. That's not upstart. That's not systemd. That's not even sysv init. That's a super minimal init system that the Microsoft team implemented. We're working with them a little bit on what's the best route forward. You know, should we try to help get systemd booting inside of this environment? Should we look at something else? I don't have a technical answer there with what that team is going to do. But right now, the important thing is that it can fork processes. We can run daemons, and you know, it's really on that Microsoft team to implement enough of the base system so that this shell behaves like an Ubuntu machine.
Okay, so the target for this, from Microsoft's point of view, is really just developers and developer tools, right? They're not planning on supporting this for any kind of production deployment.
That's right. It's not available on Windows Server. This is only available on Windows Desktop. This is targeted at the developer and the developer persona. It's the person who is maybe using maybe developing apps for the cloud, writing apps, writing services, writing software for Azure or AWS. Maybe they're using Visual Studio. Maybe they're not. I can tell you that I had to do a little bit of work actually to package the Ubuntu image for upload to the Windows Store. And all of the guides and tutorials said, you know, open up Visual Studio and do this, that, and the other. And I spent about an hour in Visual Studio. Again, the first time I'd used Visual Studio in 16 years. And I was just lost and kind of frustrated. And so after about a half hour, maybe 45 minutes of that, I literally dropped to a shell. I opened up the 30 or so XML files I had to create or modify in VI, and actually edited a couple of them, and then used sed and grep and find to replace the rest of the code that needed to be updated and changed, and it felt very natural, you know. And those were files that were modified on the local Windows C drive, and then I went back to Visual Studio, clicked build, and out the other end came a .apex, a package suitable for upload to the Windows Store.
Nice. So nobody's told Microsoft that YAML is what everybody's using these days, right?
I actually had that conversation. I did have that conversation, and we'll see. We'll see. We'll see if it has any impact.
So you said that you had to create the app package for this. How much actual customization went into making Ubuntu run on this new Windows subsystem?
From our perspective, zero, and I mean absolutely zero. Creating the package was a matter of updating the metadata that describes the package itself for upload to the Windows Store. What you're looking at here is literally the Ubuntu cloud, the Ubuntu server tarball, the root file system. It's bit for bit, checksum for checksum, the exact same tarball that we upload to Docker Hub, that we upload to the LexD images, that we deploy in mass, that we deploy to Amazon, Google Compute, or Azure. It's the exact same manifest, the exact same package set, the exact same binaries, minus the kernel, of course. But in the Docker and LexD environments, we're not shipping a kernel, right? Those are containers. So from our perspective, this is really quite beautiful. It's not a some sort of Frankenstein creation of Ubuntu. This is literally the Ubuntu server tarball.
So there's no Microsoft extensions here. The typical embrace, extend, extinguish does not apply because they're not providing this, right? We're actually providing the Ubuntu side of all this.
That's exactly right. We're responsible for the Ubuntu build and the quality of that Ubuntu build, and Microsoft's responsible for the layer underneath it, that syscall translation layer. You could think of it. It's not virtualization. It's very clearly not virtualization, but you could think of it as Microsoft being responsible for the VMware or the VirtualBox or the sort of the vagrant layer, the thing underneath. We're responsible for Ubuntu inside of that environment.
All right, so we're going to get through some of these questions. There are a lot of questions. Not all of them are serious ones, so I'm going to try and pick out the serious ones to start with. Let's see, the first one from Aurora Avenue is, any change with the HUD? So this is a question we get asked most weeks, usually by Chloe Wolfie Girl, so somebody new this week. No change in the HUD yet. With Unity 8 being worked on for the desktop, I hope to see the designs for that and the implementation to start soon. We'll just have to keep bugging John Lee on that one. All right, Mario Grip asks, how is Ubuntu on Windows 10 good for Ubuntu and Canonical? Dustin, can you take that one?
Yeah, you bet. Our mission has always been to bring free and open source software to the world. And I think you've seen us make inroads with that on the Ubuntu as a desktop, Ubuntu as a server, Ubuntu in the cloud, Ubuntu on the phone, Ubuntu now on devices. This was a really interesting opportunity that presented itself to bring Ubuntu directly to Windows desktop users, and that's really exciting. I think aside from Canonical's interest in delivering Ubuntu, I think all of us have a general interest in delivering free and open source software to the world. This is a tremendous opportunity to introduce open source software to people who might not otherwise see it. I'm thinking kids in school, elementary, high school, college, that may not see Ubuntu otherwise. And now Ubuntu's one simple command on their Windows desktop from joining our community, joining our ecosystem, joining our world. I think we're all really excited about that. And from my perspective as the product manager for Ubuntu Server, I see this as a fantastic opportunity to enable developers to continue using Ubuntu as a development platform and deploying those applications, those servers that they write into a public cloud running Ubuntu somewhere. And obviously Microsoft's also a partner of ours on the public cloud side of things, where we see as much Ubuntu in Azure as anywhere else.
All right, Aurora Avenue is asking, can you plug in a video player into the phone? I'm not quite sure what you're asking there. If you mean, can you plug in the phone to like a TV or something and play videos from it? Yeah, you can do that with the Nexus 4 or the Nexus 7 tablet if you've got a slim port adapter. The other phones don't have hardware video out, so we're working on a wireless protocol to do that. He's also asking, can you just clarify which convergence phones and tablets will be released to buy, not to pre-order, and when? So the only convergence device that you can buy right now is the BQ M10, and I'm not sure if that's pre-order or if it's straight buy right now, because I think they said they were going to ship sometime in the next week or two. So I would consider that being available to buy. And the next one is the Meizu Pro 5, which should have the wireless video out option on there right now. If you want to play with something today, though, the best bet is to pick up a Nexus 4 or a 2013 Nexus 7 and one of those little hardware slim port adapters. All right. Let's see, he's also asking about 180-degree pictures on the phone. No, our app doesn't support that yet. How good is the Ubuntu App Showdown subreddit on the phone? So I've got a Reddit app called uReddit that I use, and I'm subscribed to that subreddit, and it looks very good on there. So, yeah, Ubuntu App Showdown subreddit. Everybody go join that. All right, I'm going to go pick through some here. All right, what changes are necessary with Ubuntu 16.04 as opposed to 14.04, and can you talk for the flavors? So there have been a lot of just under-the-hood changes between 14.04 and 16.04. You know, every package gets a new release pulled from Debian every release. The LTSs have bigger changes between them. As far as the flavors, I don't know how many big changes there are. I think KDE is probably the biggest one because they've moved from KDE 4 to KDE 5. And we've got official flavors for Ubuntu Mate and Ubuntu GNOME. I don't think we had either of those in 14.04 either. All right. Next is Aurora Avenue asks, would you consider Ubuntu Phone an American or a European project? So it's a global project as far as actually building the thing, because we've got Canonical engineers and community people contributing from all over the world. Right now, it works really well in Europe because that's where our hardware partners are focused. We have not yet got a hardware partner releasing a phone in the US. Everyone over here is kind of still waiting for that to happen. All right, Mario Grip asks, why did Canonical help Microsoft build a development platform which can cause developers to stop using Ubuntu and use Windows instead? So Dustin, do you think that's a concern that this might keep people from switching to Ubuntu?
I could see how someone might think that, but I think that's a fairly naive expectation. I think users who are going to use Ubuntu desktops use Ubuntu desktops, and you know we love the Ubuntu desktop. I still use Ubuntu as my desktop all day, every day, as do millions of others. I think about this more in terms of people who are either required or forced or given a Windows laptop, a way of getting them Ubuntu more easily, more quickly than ever before, more seamlessly than ever before. And I think it's quite an interesting posture for Microsoft to take. Think about, Michael, how long have you been doing this? How long have you been around the Ubuntu itself?
Oh, geez. Not quite a decade now.
So almost 10 years. Can you fathom this existing 10 years ago? Just
No.
think about the posture of Microsoft 10 years ago. This is a wholesale endorsement of free and open source software by Microsoft. This is an endorsement of Ubuntu in particular as being important to Microsoft in the greater ecosystem of technology. That's an incredible thing. That's a win that I think all of us should celebrate, even those of us that are nervous about what are Microsoft's intentions here. I think we should all understand and celebrate the fact that that Microsoft recognizes Ubuntu, recognizes free and open source software, and is willing to accept that into their ecosystem. That's unprecedented before this month.
Yeah, and beyond users, I mean, this may keep some end users on Windows, but for every one of those, there's going to be countless developers that it's going to keep on free and open source software and that kind of development environment, because now they don't have a reason to focus specifically on Microsoft runtimes for their tools. They just pick open source tools, Ubuntu environment, and they know it's going to work for everybody.
Yeah, moreover, I think we've been entrusted with an incredible responsibility. This is going to be the first Linux and free and open source experience that many people have in the world, coming soon. We're given the opportunity to showcase Ubuntu for them, and I fully well expect to convert some of them into into Linux developers, into Ubuntu users over time?
I know I've used the Cygwin tools in past jobs where I had to be on Windows, and I would have loved to have an actual, honest-to-God Ubuntu environment that wasn't in a virtual machine. Because I tried that too, and then you've got two different, setups. You can't access files from one or the other very easily. So yeah, this would have been great while I was forced to use Windows at work.
Yep, exactly. There's a question somewhere in the list about Cygwin. Is this the death of Cygwin? I don't know if it's the death of Cygwin. I'll tell you that my experience has been far more positive using this than I've ever experienced with Cygwin. Cygwin was always a little bit wonky, a little bit flaky. It didn't quite work right. What I've seen here is that it behaves like being in an Ubuntu shell.
Yeah, I think Cygwin, its use case is really if you want a GNU tool on a Windows environment. Whereas this is, you're getting the whole Ubuntu environment, so you don't have to worry about the Windows environment side of things.
Yep.
All right, Chloe's asking, any update on when we can install Unity 8 on the desktop, or should we move to Windows 10? If you're on the development release of 1604, you can install it's Unity 8 desktop session mir, and I'll type that in the IRC. If you install that package and then you log out to LightDM, you'll have the ability to select that as your desktop shell when you log in. So that's, I think, right now the official way to run this. I don't know if the LXC container is still being a supported method of testing this out. But that should work for you if you are on open source video drivers. It still does not work for the proprietary AMD or NVIDIA drivers. Although we did see an announcement from NVIDIA recently that they've started adding support for Mir, so maybe that will change in the near future. Okay, Aurora Avenue asks, how do I convince my family from Donegal that they need the Ubuntu tablet? That's really up to your family. Not everybody needs an Ubuntu tablet. A lot of people want an Ubuntu tablet. It might be easier to convince them that they want one instead of need one. But that's too specific for us to give you a generic answer on. Aurora is also asking, will there be a Lamborghini version of the Ubuntu phone, and at what expenditure? I think the closest you've got right now is the Meizu phones. They have really good quality, high quality hardware specs, and they're not too expensive either. So not quite Lamborghini, but definitely a really good car. All right, I'm going to skip down a few. Fast Snail asked what Canonical benefits from the deal, and I think we've already answered that one sufficiently. Chloe Wolfie Girl asks, now that Ubuntu is on Windows, when is MS Office and other MS products coming to Ubuntu? So you've got Minecraft and Skype already for Ubuntu, the two important ones. I don't know about Microsoft Office. What?
SQL Server now runs on Ubuntu.
That's right. You can run SQL Server on Ubuntu, which is really cool. So maybe we'll start to see more of their server products become available, if not the desktop. Maybe they're switching, I think, Office to an online thing too. Maybe that'll work in Ubuntu in a browser.
I've needed to collaborate with Microsoft around a couple of documents, and Microsoft Office now has an online version, much like a Google Docs. That's worked perfectly for me in Chrome and Firefox browsers on my Ubuntu desktop. I think it's called live365.com. We've edited spreadsheets, presentations, and Microsoft Docs just fine, live and in the browser.
Cool. Have you tried that on the Ubuntu browser?
What's that?
Have you tried that on the Ubuntu browser?
I haven't tried it in the Ubuntu browser, no, but Chrome and Firefox I have, and it's worked flawlessly on an Ubuntu desktop. I'll say that experience is far better for me than the native Microsoft Office or LibreOffice experience working collaboratively in a browser.
Cool. All right, Aurora asks, sometimes on short haul flights I'm told to turn off my phone. Is the Ubuntu phone different? Could we have an amnesty on turning off phones for short haul flights? No, that's really hardware specific, and there's a lot of debate about why that rule still exists and whether or not it's a good rule to have. But the software on your phone is not going to make any difference to that one way or the other. All right, Fast Snail asks, any news on the Meizu Pro 5 after the initial announcement? It's total silence. I don't have any news on that. I thought it was supposed to go on pre-order this or last month, but they may be waiting on the OTA 10 release of the Ubuntu phone software, which is not quite out yet. I think that comes out next week, maybe this week. All right, Aurora asks, are you happy with the status quo in Ubuntu, or do you think the system should change? How should the system change? So Dustin, do you have any thoughts on the underlying way Ubuntu works and any changes that should be made there?
How so? At the kernel and init level, or are we talking more process and community governance level?
I think he's talking about at a technical level, and my first thought would be Snappy and the moves that we're already making on there.
Yeah, I'm quite excited about Snappy. I think it's really interesting to rethink the packaging of the OS. Having myself had most of a decade's experience building RPM and deb packages, and then moving on the server side to building charms with Juju, we've really explored a lot of the intricate problems and interconnected problems of what it takes to package something. With Juju, we needed to reinvent the way deployment of services, installation of services works, where basically installing a package requires multiple machines. You need to put a database over here and a web server over there, and that just didn't work with Yum or apt, and so we created Juju. With Snappy, we're seeing, I think, something's interesting as well, particularly in the embedded space, where you need your apps. You really want, from a security perspective, you want your apps to be very separate from the rest of your system. And so, we looked at debs, we looked at apt, and decided that some of the fundamental design decisions inherent in debs and in apt just simply precluded us from being able to do that. And so we set out to create this new concept, these snaps, where snaps themselves are applications that run in a confined environment. They've got all the access they need to get their job done, but no more than that. And from a security perspective, I'm quite interested and quite excited about that. Having a lot of smart devices around my house, I'm always very mindful of the fact that either deliberately malicious or just ignorance could cause real problems in my house. Right, my refrigerator could defrost the freezer and flood my entire house. Right, my thermostat could go nuts and overcook my house. Right, you could do physical damage to things around your house, and that's sort of the world we're in with smart devices. I'm very excited about what Snappy brings to that picture.
So there was an article just recently where I think Linus Torvalds was talking about security in IoT and the fact that the first generation of IoT devices, they ship with the software that's on there, and it's never going to get an update. So when somebody finds a security vulnerability, that product's going to be vulnerable for its entire life.
Yep.
And Snappy really changes the way that works because it makes it easy to deliver updates to the software either at the app level or the OS level for any of these devices, so that your fridge, as you used as an example, can get updates over the air. It's going to work. It's going to be a safe install. And if something goes wrong, it'll automatically fall back to where it was before. But your fridge can get updates so that it won't flood your house once somebody finds a bug in it, or somebody finds a way to break into your network using one of these devices.
Right.
So that's going to let us secure IoT and smart homes in a way that they aren't currently right now.
Yeah, I'd encourage anyone listening or watching to run sudo nmap on their home network, and run the operating system probe. I think it's dash capital A capital O, and it will basically find all the IP addresses on your local network, and will send a series of network packets that allows nmap to guess the operating system running on those devices. And I think you will be amazed at how many Linux 2.4, 2.6 kernels, ancient unmaintained kernels, on these devices that will, as Lena said, never see another update. That's scary. That's really scary. I'm quite excited about how we're solving that with Snappy. I think we'll all have a lot more confidence in our smart home in a couple of years as Snappy makes its way into those devices.
All right, so Mario Grip has an interesting question for Ubuntu on Windows. What happens if you run rm-rf /?
Exactly what you think happens. So this shell is running with all of the same privileges that the Windows desktop user that you're logged in has. So if the local Windows desktop user can delete files on the C drive, then Linux, the Linux shell, the Ubuntu shell, can do the same thing. If it's prevented from doing that, it's prevented from doing so. Now the Linux environment, the Ubuntu on Windows environment, can be reset very easily by running a single command. It's lx install / uninstall, and you can do that and then do it again to reset it. So, if I've apt installed a bunch of stuff for Cruft and I want to reset this back to stock, I can do that very, very simply, very easily. That's not necessarily the case with Windows. You may need to go into a recovery partition to then restore your Windows environment.
So the moral of the story is be careful what you run in the Ubuntu environment, because...
Well, yeah, but I mean, no more careful than you would normally be in the Windows environment. Do you open up File Explorer and just delete the C drive?
Yeah.
No.
If people think of it like a VM, then they might think it's safely segregated from the host OS.
Right.
All right, Aurora asks, why are there no Ubuntu shops in London? How can I walk into a shop and buy Canonical or Ubuntu Touch product? So we have a bunch of brick and mortar stores in China and India and Russia and Mexico that I know of. Probably more countries than that, but those are the ones that I know of. And China and India alone are so big that covers a pretty significant population. As far as bringing it to Europe and the U.S., that's going to be a bit more of an uphill battle just because of the way the economies and the markets are here. But yeah, we do have some, just not in London. All right, Fast Snail asks, how would you describe the Ubuntu store for phone and tablet? Is it alive and kicking, asleep, or dead? So I've been tracking this since about the time we released it. I go and I check the stats about once a month, and it's consistently growing. We had, at the beginning of last year, we had a really big spike in the number of apps when we started opening it up to web apps some more. But it's always shown consistent growth, and it's only going to show more as we get more phones on the market, more tablets on the market, and also once we start opening up the store to desktop app developers to use, which should be happening pretty soon once everything merges in to the Snappy world. So yeah, alive and well, still growing, still kicking. All right, I'm going to skip a few. Mario Grip asks, is Ubuntu on Windows 10 open source?
Ubuntu is, absolutely. Microsoft's syscall translation layer is not, at least not at this time, and Microsoft's minimal init system is not at this time. That's Microsoft's decision, and I would refer you to Microsoft, for questions or requests or explanations about that. But everything inside of this shell is, as I said, the pure Ubuntu root file system tarball that we upload to all of the public and private clouds, and that's a combination of both free and open source code.
And you can get the source code for any of those using apt-get source, just like you would on any other Ubuntu install, right?
That's absolutely right. Absolutely right. We can we can go and get the source of anything you like.
All right, Fastnail asks, when will the Ubuntu phone transition to snaps, and what will that mean for developers? So that will probably happen sometime after 1604. Right now the phones have been pinned to the Vivid release, and we've just added on top of that. So once we update the phones, which I think is going to happen sometime after 1604 is released, we'll transition to that. And that's probably when the snappy conversion will happen. For developers, that's not going to mean too much for you. All of the tools will just switch from building click packages to building snap packages. And we should have tools that will let you automatically transition existing click packages into snaps. Because they do share, even though they're different at a binary level, at a conceptual level, they're very similar, so it would be easy enough to transition all the metadata from one format to the other. All right, Aurora is asking, why don't we have a real-time translation app on Ubuntu phones? I think we have a translation app. I don't know what you mean by real-time, if you mean like taking pictures of something. I don't think we have that, or voice recognition. But I think we've got something where you can, type in some text and get a translation. Check the store. If there isn't one, go ahead and write one. I know there are APIs out there for that kind of thing. Chloe Wolfie Girl asks, any Mycroft on Ubuntu phone updates? Not from us. The Mycroft people have started shipping their first Kickstarter backer hardware units. I saw a post from them, I think just yesterday, about them shipping out their first one. So you should be getting, if you funded a device, then you should be getting that soon, or an SD card if you got the software SDK like I did. As far as the app itself, I haven't heard an update. We can maybe get Ryan Sipes on again. We had him on this Q&A once before, so he'll probably come on again and talk about it. I will put that out to him and see. AMP asks, what are Ubuntu plans to provide personal cloud options to consumers, such things like syncing files or even system settings, as we recently saw in the KDE own cloud plans? Is the Ubuntu One going to be revived, or some own cloud integration? The Ubuntu One file sync is most likely not going to be revived. That was a money sink, and probably still is for everybody involved in cloud storage. We will do everything that we can to support things like OwnCloud and Dropbox on Ubuntu desktop and phones, though.
It's a super crowded space. From a product perspective, I've looked at that. There's a lot of great alternatives. Google Drive, Microsoft has a Drive, Amazon has a Drive, Dropbox, Box.net, there's OwnCloud. It's just a really crowded space. Ubuntu One was certainly early to that picture, and we integrated it really well with Ubuntu desktops. It turns out that the services that integrate it with all of the desktops, like a Dropbox, which is, as Michael said, a very expensive proposition. Those are the ones that are still out there and remaining. So, and I would say that it's a great idea, but really crowded, really highly competitive product space.
All right, Fastnails. Oh no, we answered that one. Nightmare asks, any chance of getting a data usage feature added to the Ubuntu phone? Sure, put in a feature request. If you're a developer, help us develop something like that. We've had a lot of community people who are contributing to the core parts of the Ubuntu phone. It's not just Canonical people working on that. So if that's something that you can contribute to, then join #Ubuntu-touch on IRC, and somebody there will get you set up to start developing that. Fastnail asks, which Ubuntu phones are you guys using, and what are your favorite apps? Dustin, you're using an Ubuntu phone, right?
Yeah, I've got the Meizu 4. I like it. I like the edge gestures for sure. I'll play a couple of basic games. It's a really neat device. I find the camera quality really good as well, and I'll take pictures of my kids with the camera.
So you're in the U.S. How does that work with the radio frequencies over here?
Well enough. I've got T-Mobile service. So I pop my SIM card into the phone, and phone quality's good. Text messages come across just fine. Um, Data service works. Maybe not quite as fast as my newer HTC Android phone, but from a functionality perspective, it's quite functional.
So what's your favorite app on there?
uh, you know, these days it's the camera. I mean, having two small kids, it's taking pictures of the kids.
So I've got a Nexus 4 that I've been using for years now, since late 2013, I think. And I'm on AT&T, and it works really well on that. Like you said, I love the edge gestures. I can't go back to Android anymore without swiping around at the edges.
Hmm.
And it's incredibly frustrating now to use Android because of that.
Hmm.
Um, my favorite app tends to change. I get sucked into whatever game is new. So my new addiction is balls, which is nice because it gets updates just about every day, something new. In the past, it's been Machines versus Machines or Monster Wars, or like I said, I just jump from one game to another. Those are my favorites. All right, Seb asks, is there any point for Cygwin anymore, really, with the new Ubuntu for Windows? And I think you answered that earlier.
Yep.
All right, Nightmare asks, is there any plans to support for greater HTML5 API integration for the Ubuntu phone? So we already support the Cordova APIs. We're officially supported by them upstream. So that gives you a lot of access to the hardware and services on the phone. There's also work going on right now to integrate web notifications and web push notifications in the browser and the web app container. So yeah, there's ongoing work on those to expand the feature set, but we already cover quite a few of them. All right, next question is Mario Grip. Any status on NVIDIA drivers with Mir? Nothing outside of their latest announcement where they mentioned in the release notes that they're adding Mir and Wayland support to it. As far as I know, neither one of those display servers just works yet on those drivers, but it's good to see that there's progress being made there. All right, the guest asks, what kind of advantage will gain Ubuntu Linux from Ubuntu on phones? So Dustin covered this a couple times earlier in the video. So if you missed the first part of this video, go back and watch it. It'll be available on YouTube to watch anytime later. He goes into some detail on that. Nightmare asks, what do you think the adoption for snaps will be like when it becomes default for the desktop? So that's a good question. Snaps really are going to kind of change the way things work. Instead of everything going through the distro and the distro developers, you're going to be able to get things directly from upstream. So that means you're going to get newer versions of apps all the time. You're not going to be frozen on it for 6 months or for 2 for 2 years if you're on LTS. So you'll get newer stuff. You'll get things that can't go in the archives because they're not open source. And for me as a developer, the most exciting thing is how fast you'll be able to get things to your users. Using the Click Store for the phone has really been a wonderful experience because I can upload an app and publish it, and people can install it on their phone in less than a minute. And that's something we've never been able to offer on the desktop before. So I think that'll be a real game changer for us. Seb asks, Ubuntu for Windows, command line stuff, yes, but any plans to bring graphical things over like that as well?
No. So right now, this is really focused on the developer who's writing code. Not so much on the desktop user of Ubuntu. Back to the previous question, there's still plenty of good reasons to continue using Ubuntu as your desktop platform, and I think that's one very important one. If you want GTK apps, you want graphical apps, you want Unity, you still want Ubuntu as a desktop. What we've provided to Microsoft for Windows 10 is Ubuntu as a shell environment.
And you have to remember, there's a lot more to modern graphical apps than just displaying the window. You know, they expect debus services and other stuff that, you know, is always there on a traditional Linux desktop that may not be on this environment.
Yep. Michael, I see another question at the bottom, which I think is a good question I'd like to field
Sure.
from Mario Grip. What do you think about Ubuntu BSD? I'd actually like to draw a couple of comparisons between what we're seeing with Ubuntu on Windows and Ubuntu BSD, Docker, even the Joyent cloud. In all of these cases, what we have is an Ubuntu user space running on someone else's platform or with someone else's kernel and potentially a init system. So I think Docker is a first good example of that. Docker being a container system, Ubuntu is the most popular image in Docker. It's just the Ubuntu user space, that tarball, that root tarball, that is the image that gets run when you run Docker run Ubuntu. We've done some work with our partner Joyent, who stood up a public cloud using a Solaris, basically an open Solaris kernel, a Unix host, but they're running Ubuntu as a guest in effectively a container, a Solaris zone inside of Joyent, and it's kind of crazy, but it's Ubuntu Linux user space running on a Solaris Unix kernel effectively. That's not too different than say Ubuntu BSD. So here we have a BSD kernel and a BSD init system, not systemd, but that community is very interested in Ubuntu as a user space. And then finally, this Ubuntu on Windows, as we said, is Ubuntu user space. In all of those cases, what I think we've spent the last decade plus building is a really beautiful experience for delivering quality, high quality, free and open source software on a cadence every 6 months and LTS every other year. And that that the entire world of open source software is a simple apt install away. That was one of the things that the Windows developers, and many Windows developers that I've met over the last couple of months continue to be impressed by, is how rich the apt experience, that sort of Linux store of open source software, how rich that is and how easily and tightly integrated that is into the command line experience. You know, a lot of us see stores, the Windows Store, the iPhone Store, you know, the Android marketplace as a new concept, but it's not new to those of us that have been around apt for a long time or Yum for a long time. That's just part of the Ubuntu experience, and it's long been part of the Ubuntu experience.
And it's really cool that we've gone from, you know, we started out as a desktop OS, and now we're really this kind of portable platform that you can find just about anywhere.
Yep.
And, you know, bringing free software to all of these different places where it may not have been accessible before.
There was another question about PowerShell. Does this replace PowerShell? And I'd like to address that one as well, if I might, Michael.
Sure.
I think this is a great complement to PowerShell. I know some PowerShell users, and they love PowerShell. They swear by it. It's got a really incredible, interesting model. Everything is API driven. It passes objects around as opposed to the sort of the Linux command line that passes text as input and output. I would say that Bash and Ubuntu on Windows is more of a complement to PowerShell. For a user who is a skilled, seasoned PowerShell user, I don't think that user instantly becomes a Bash in Ubuntu on Windows user. And I don't think necessarily a skilled Linux shell user becomes a PowerShell user immediately or overnight. But this does give you a very native way of speaking your language. You know, imagine traveling to a foreign country and being able to speak your native language and have those around you understand basically what you're saying. That's the experience I've had now using Bash in Windows.
So kind of on that vein, Nightmare asked, how far can you administer a Windows environment using Bash?
Fairly far. Not everything. Windows is very API driven. That's been an interesting thing for me to learn here. You don't have access to the entire Windows API. Most importantly, the registry. There's no access to the registry yet inside of the Ubuntu environment. But you do have access to the file system. So you certainly can search the file system. You can modify or update files, but you don't have access to the devices or the registry. So it's somewhat limited. But the things that are available, you could back it up. For instance, you could rsync your C drive. Rsync is something that Windows users have asked for a long time. Have used Cygwin or something like that for just an incremental backup. So file access, file directory access. Sure, you've certainly got access to that. Lower level than that, not so much yet.
So. Question that I had come up before is, what kind of file system does this use? Is it just using the native NTFS?
Yeah, that's exactly right. If you want to flip over to the desktop for a second, I've just run mount. What you see are essentially what looks like a root file system mounted on slash, a tempfs on dev, a proc, and a sysfs. This is actually using the NTFS that's underneath the Windows install. If we look at dev, we don't see any disks in dev, so we don't have raw access to SDA or SDB. The Windows subsystem for Linux, the WSL or the WSL, has presented and performed those sort of mounts already for us. What we do see in dev is a pretty minimal dev. We've got dev random and urandom, a TTY, dev 0, but what we don't see is dev mouse or dev, the sound card or the network or anything like that. The network is actually interesting. This Linux environment, this Ubuntu environment, has the exact same IP address as the Windows host, the same port space, which means that I can get out and data can come in using the same exact IP address as the Windows host.
So can you see a list of processes with PS on here, and does that show you just the Ubuntu ones, or does it show you the Windows ones too?
Just the Ubuntu ones. So right now I'm just running bash, but I could background a sleep, for instance, and you can see that sleep is now in the background, so that was a fork, right? So I could background an SSH server or an Apache server, for instance, and that would go into the process list.
All right. We're in our last couple minutes here, but if anyone has a last-minute thing they want Dustin to show off, go ahead and get it in there. I'm going to quickly go through some of these last questions. NG242 asks, why is Ubuntu Touch porting so hard? And Mario Grip has already answered on IRC. So Mario is one of our community porters, and he's working on some tools to make it easier to port to new devices. We're also working with him to get our porting documentation updated. So if you're interested in porting, get in touch with him. Get in touch with me on IRC, and Popey also, who's supposed to be on holiday this week and not on IRC. But yeah, if you can help us out with that, we'd love to get some help. Chloe's asking if Canonical will push for encryption as default like iOS. And I know there's been some talk about encrypting at least the user space side of things on the phone. I don't know what the status of that is right now. But with the read-only file system on the phones and also on Snappy stuff, there's not much benefit in encrypting that part of things because it's all going to be the same on every device in public anyway. All right. Chloe asks, you can now see Android notifications on Windows 10. Are there plans to make Android notifications show and be replyable on Ubuntu? So KDE has something called KDE Connect, and you can get that on Kubuntu. I don't know if it'll run on other desktop shells, but that offers that already. Nightmare asks, native SSH support on Windows, and you showed SSHing out, and you mentioned also that you could actually run an SSH server from that environment, correct?
Yes, there are a couple of bugs still left in the SSH server, but the Windows team is very keenly working on that one. I also see a question about SCP. Yes, you can SSH out, you can SCP files to and from. So yes, definitely. The SSH suite is is one of the highest priority commands that the Windows team wants to ensure works and works well on Ubuntu and Windows.
And you could run other services on there, like if you're developing a web app and you need to run, I think Redis was an example the Microsoft guys used, or Memcached or something like that.
Yes, we've seen Node.js, we've seen Nginx, we've seen Apache, we've seen Redis. These are all very interesting workloads to the Microsoft team that's working on this.
All right. Well, our time is up. I'm sorry we couldn't get through all of the questions, but we did manage to get through most of them. If we missed you, you can come back next week. We will be here same day, same time, different host next week. So come back with questions there, or you can ask them anytime on any of the various Ubuntu IRC channels that we have. You can watch this video anytime on YouTube. We're youtube.com/UbuntuOnAir. You can see this and any previously recorded Ubuntu On Air videos there. You can also follow us on YouTube. We are at Ubuntu On Air on YouTube. Thank you, everybody, for coming along and for all those great questions. Thank you, Dustin, for being our guest today and for giving us a demo. We really appreciate that. And we will see you all next week. Bye, everyone.